Hi, I'm Jay, and I'm kind of an idiot. Let me explain. Last week, I put out a video where I did a whole production breakdown of one of my little short skits called Project Redlamb. If you haven't seen it yet, I highly recommend you check it out. It'll be linked in the description and in the end screen and in a card at some point during this video. And in that video, I said that I was going to be doing a detailed tutorial of how I did the little fire effect. Here's the problem. I accidentally deleted all of the footage. So now what I need to do is I need to reshoot some example footage here. So I'm out here on my back deck where I shot the skit, and I've got my camera and a couple other things set up here. Let me show you. I've got the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 6K right here. Got the ND on it. I don't have any audio set up because this is just a Fusion tutorial that we're doing. But yeah, so there's the camera, and then I don't have a focus puller, and the Pocket doesn't have any autofocus. Well, it has one touch, but so I've got a focus card on a monopod that is set up exactly where I'm going to be standing for the example footage. So I'm going to pull focus on that. That's right at eye level for me. See, it's right at eye level. So we're good to go there. So if I pull focus on this and I stand in this spot, then we should have focus on my face. And so yeah, I'm gonna do that real quick, and then we're gonna jump into this tutorial. You probably can't see past my reflection in the screen, but we are perfectly in focus with the card. All right, let's go ahead and set this up. All right, let's do this tutorial. I have tried to record this video like 7 times now. It's been interesting. The plan was to just sit down right after I filmed that vlog section in the beginning and then do the tutorial, but there was babies and then dinner and then kids and babies and dinner and then 2 days of fighting with screen recorders. It's been a mess. By the way, how did you like that little vlog section at the beginning of this video? Let me know by giving this video a thumbs up. And while you're down there, on an unrelated note, did you know that only 15% of the people watching this video are subscribed to this channel? I've got a whole bunch of editing content, and there's a lot more coming. So maybe while you're down there giving this video a like, maybe you could subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. Also, big thanks to Puget Systems for sponsoring this video. More on them later. Either way, we're here now. I'm pretty sure I got all the technical problems figured out. We're about to find out. I've got all my stuff here in Davinci Resolve. Let me show you what we're working with. I've got that example footage that you saw me filming earlier right here on video 1. And then above that on video 2, I've got one of these little energy burst effects. And on video 3, I've got my other energy burst effect. And what we're going to do is we're going to track my hands in Fusion, and then we're going to use that tracking data to make those energy bursts move with my hands. It's actually a lot easier than it sounds. So let's go ahead and get started. First thing we need to do is create a Fusion clip. So what we're going to do is we're just going to highlight all 3 of these clips. We're going to right click, and we're going to click New Fusion Clip. Next thing we're going to do is just make sure that this clip is selected. Let's go back to the beginning of our timeline, and we're just going to click on Fusion to head into the Fusion page. And when you get into the Fusion page, you're going to see a composition that looks a lot like this one. We've got our media in, which is our main footage. Let's go ahead and drop that into our left monitor so you can see. And then media 2, we've got one of our handy dandy little energy bursts. And then media 3 is the same thing, another energy burst. So first thing I want to do, because I hate this fluid motion, is we're going to right click and select Arrange Tools to Grid. That way everything's nice and neat and it snaps to the grid. All right, first thing we need to do is track my hands. So let's go ahead once again. We're going to throw the main footage here into that left-hand monitor. And then what we're going to do is hit Shift Space, and that's going to bring up our select tool. And we're going to type in PLA, and we're going to select our Planar Tracker and hit Add. Now, before we actually get to tracking everything and hooking it all up, I forgot to mention earlier, if you're wondering where I got that energy burst effect, I actually picked it up from Action VFX, which is one of my favorite places to get Hollywood level stock visual effects. I mean, when I say Hollywood level, I mean they've actually used these effects in Hollywood movies like Spider-Man Far From Home and a whole bunch of others. They're not sponsoring this video, by the way. I know it sounds like they are, but they're not. I'm just really excited about them, especially since they just started a subscription service that starts at like $14.99 a month, and it gives you unlimited access to their entire library, which is just super, super cool. I mean, if you buy these things individually, a pack of effects usually costs a few $100, so you might want to click the link in the description and check them out before they actually get their heads on straight and start charging more. All right, so let's go ahead and find something to track here. Now, you guys probably can't see it because this is log footage and you might be watching it on a phone, but I have a little tattoo of a star. See, it's right here. Got another one right here, and it actually makes a really good tracking point. So what we're going to do is we're going to come into this left-hand monitor, and we're just going to tap to make a couple points. We're just going to make a box around that star. There we go. And then we're going to come over into the inspector. Now there's a lot of settings here, and originally what I was going to do was actually have a few different fusion compositions and with different levels of difficulty, and I was going to show you some ways to like maybe get around some of the difficulties that you might have when tracking stuff. But if we do that, we're going to be here all night and I need sleep. So instead what I'm going to do is do a nice easy clip, and then we're going to run through the tools and I'm going to show you some of the things that you can use in order to increase the likelihood that you will get a nice, good, clean track. So we've got our little box here. We're in the inspector, and let's start with the tracker settings. So you've got two options here. You've got point and hybrid point area. Now, I'm not sure what the technical difference is between the two, but I tend to get a better result when I'm using hybrid point area. So we're going to use that. So let's go ahead and change the tracker from point to hybrid point area. And then motion type, we've got a lot of options. We've got perspective, which is what the default is. And then we've got translation, which is just position on the screen. Then we've got rotation, which is position on the screen and, well, the rotation. And then we've got translation, rotation, and scale. And scale is good if my hand is moving closer to the lens, farther away from the lens. It will get bigger and smaller. And then we've got affine. I still don't know what affine does. And again, we've got perspective. Now, for this particular one, we aren't really moving our hands very often, so we only really need to worry about translation. So let's go ahead and click that. And then for output, we're going to keep it as background, and track channel we're going to keep as Luma. Now you do have a few options here. You've got red, green, blue, and custom. Red, green, and blue are very, very interesting. So right now we're tracking Luma. So basically it's kind of the equivalent of contrast-based autofocus, right? It's tracking the Luma differences between what you drew your little box around and the surrounding area. But sometimes that doesn't work. In fact, quite often it doesn't work, especially if your hands are moving around a lot. And if that's the case, then you might want to look at red, green, and blue. That means you can track the red channel. This is color we're talking about now, the green channel or the blue channel. Now, red is really good if you're tracking skin tones, but it doesn't work if you're surrounded by a whole bunch of stuff that also has a bunch of red in it. For example, in this footage, I've got, red in my skin tones, but then I've also got the banister for the deck. I've got the deck itself. I've got the shed back here. I've got the fence. I've got the branches of the trees. Those are all brown, which means they have a lot of red in them. So we're not going to deal with the red channel. We could also do the blue channel, which, considering we're tracking a tattoo, That would work. That would probably work. But because there is such a contrast difference between the tattoo and my skin, we're going to stick with Luma. So let's go ahead and stick with Luma here. And then all we need to do is make sure that our cursor is way over at the beginning, or our playhead rather, and we just need to come over here and click track forward. And you can see that it's tracking pretty quickly too. That's very, very nice. I always enjoy it when it tracks quickly. And we are done. And you'll see if you get a good track, then you'll have a whole bunch of keyframes and your little window should still be around your tracking point. So we're all good to go. What we're going to do is we're going to come over into the inspector and we're going to create a planar transform. And we'll bring this planar transform a little bit closer, but we're just going to leave it alone for now. Now we're going to track my left hand here. I think I've been saying left hand this whole time. We were tracking my right hand before. Apparently I don't know my left from right anymore. Let's go ahead and track my left hand now for real. And what we're going to do is we're just going to scoot this down. Now, if you had this selected and you added another planar tracker, it would add it below this planar tracker and it wouldn't track very well. I don't know what the deal is there. It should be tracking based off of media in one, but for whatever reason it doesn't. So the safest bet is to click on media in one, make sure that's selected. We'll hit shift space again. We're going to do another planar tracker. It's already selected and we're just going to hit add. And now we've got two planar trackers here. We're going to make sure planar tracker 2 is selected. And this time we're going to draw just a box around my palm area, just like so. And once again, we're going to change from point to hybrid point area, from perspective to translation. And we're going to stick with Luma, except I made a little bit of a mistake. My playhead is still at the beginning or at the end of the timeline. So what I need to do is come back to the beginning of the clip. There we go. And you'll see it hasn't moved much, but it's moved a little bit. So let's go ahead and just reshape that box a tad. There we go. And now we can go ahead and track forward. There we go, tracking nice and quickly again. This is good. I'm glad I chose an easy clip. And when it's all said and done, you'll see you got a bunch of keyframes here. Our tracking box is still over our tracking area, which means we've got a nice clean track. So let's go ahead and create a planar transform. And let's bring that over here because we're going to be using it in just a second. Now, these planar transforms here, what they do is they take all the tracking data from the planar tracker nodes and they make it so you can connect other objects to them, like our energy bursts. So what we're going to do is we're going to come to media in 2. We're just going to break this connection here and we're going to bring this in line. Oop. And let's go ahead and connect planar transform 1 to merge 1 and media in 2 to planar transform 1. We're going to go ahead and just bring that close. And we're actually going to bring that a little bit farther away. Same with that. Let's go ahead and break our connection there. And we're going to hook up planar transform 2 to media in 3. And to the merge, there we go. Let's go ahead and actually just clean this up a little bit because I like having nice, clean compositions. And we'll move the media in out, or the media out over there too. There we go, nice and clean. And now we get to do some fun stuff. We're going to put our energy bursts where they need to be. We're going to change the color. We're going to make them the right size. We're going to do all those things. So let's go ahead and select media in 2. We are going to add a transform node. And let's just go ahead and shrink that down a little bit. And we'll just drag it over where it needs to be. Put it right there. And we're going to rotate it a little bit. That looks good right about there. Then we're going to do the same thing for media in 3. So let's select media in 3, come up to our toolbar. We're going to add a transform node. And same thing, we're going to bring down the size. That looks good. Drag it over. Again, we're going to rotate it a little bit. Drag it over a little bit more. There we go. Next thing we want to do is we want to add a color corrector node. So we're going to select transform 1 and we're going to come up to our toolbar and we're going to select a color corrector node. And all we're going to do here is we're going to drag on our color wheel towards red. That's good right about there. And then what we want to do is make sure that this energy burst is the same color as this energy burst. So instead of adding another color corrector node from the toolbar, what we're going to do is click on our color corrector node, hit Control C to copy. Then we are going to click on transform 2 and hit Control V to paste. And it's just going to paste a copy of the color corrector node. And now we've got 2 energy bursts of the same color. All right, next thing we want to do is make sure that our motion looks a little bit more natural. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn on some motion blur here. So let's start with our merge nodes. Let's go ahead and come into settings and select motion blur. And then planar transform can do the same thing. Settings, motion blur, and then transform, settings, motion blur. I'm just turning motion blur on wherever I can. Motion blur. Motion blur. And motion blur. And that's how we create our fusion composition. That's it. Now, right now I have the blending mode of these as normal. In my little skit, I actually changed this to screen, but what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little bit of color grading and then we'll decide which blend mode actually works best for these energy bursts. But before we do any of that, I just need to say something. In that skit, that 72-second skit that I put out last week, I had 6 of these fusion compositions. 6. Now that takes a lot of power on the computer side of things, which means it's really, really important that you have a machine that can do all this. And that's why I love today's sponsor, Puget Systems, because I have no idea the kind of power that's required to do this kind of work. I let the experts handle it. So when I knew that I needed a computer in order to up my editing game and be able to do a little bit more, I hopped on a call with Puget Systems and explained my workflow to them, explained the types of projects that I worked on, the type of footage that I worked with, and they went to work designing a system that was tailor-made for exactly what I do. And let me tell you, this thing is amazing. My render times are off the charts. I can track. I mean, you saw how fast I was tracking my hands there. That was unreal. My laptop that I was using before this would have taken forever. So if you are a video editor like me, or an engineer or a gamer or anybody who heavily relies on their PC to do exactly what they need it to do when they need it to do it, click the link in the description, hop on a call with Puget Systems today, because those guys are super cool and super knowledgeable, and they'll get you started on the right foot. And if you don't want to have them build a machine, but you do want to take advantage of the vast amounts of knowledge that those guys have, they have an incredible blog that will give you all kinds of information on what components work best with what programs. So you can't go wrong either way. Check them out. Thanks so much, Puget, for sponsoring this video. Let's get to color grading. All right, we're here in the color page. Let's go ahead and throw a quick and dirty color grade on here. Real quick, let's set up our node tree. So we're gonna hit Alt-S to add a new node. That's gonna be our primaries. Then we're gonna add another node for our look, another node for our skin tones. That's actually gonna be a parallel node. And then we'll select our mixer, we'll add another node, and that's going to be to qualify our energy bursts in case it becomes a little too saturated. And then we're going to add one more node for our look adjustments. So let's go ahead and get this going. Let's select our primary node. Normally I would label these, but I used to have tab mapped out to label the nodes, and I haven't done it since I did the clean install of Davinci Resolve. So we're not labeling right now. Like I said, quick and dirty. This is not a color grading tutorial. So let's go ahead and add some contrast in this node. That's looking pretty good right there, but I actually want to add just a little bit more using an S curve. So let's go ahead and do that. Boom. There we go. Maybe back off of the contrast just a tad and add some saturation. There we go. Next thing I want to do is actually white balance against this fence right here because I know for a fact that it's white. So let's go ahead and grab our eyedropper and we'll go ahead and just click on that fence. There we go. Now we're nice and white balanced, and let's go ahead and move on to our look node. It's gonna be super, super easy. We're just gonna drop our temperature to -300, and we're going to drop our tint down to -50. There we go. Got a nice teal going on. Let's come down to our skin tones node, but we're not gonna qualify the skin tones. Instead, we're just gonna head over to hue and saturation. We're gonna bump up our reds and our yellows real quick, just a little bit. There we go. There we go. And that's bringing our skin tones back. And then because now our energy bursts are way oversaturated, let's go ahead and move over to our vector scope. You can see it's way too saturated here. So let's click that node. We're gonna go ahead and hit Shift H to turn on our highlights. And we're gonna come into our qualifiers, turn off hue, turn off luminance, and then we're just going to start bringing our saturation slider up until the only thing in here, there we go, is our energy bursts. And now let's go ahead and hit Shift H to get out of the highlights, and we're just gonna drag our saturation down until it's in an acceptable level. Right there is good, except let's go ahead and move this farther over to red. And there we go. Now, like I said before, I had these energy bursts. I had the blending mode in my merge nodes in the fusion page. I had those set to screen, but at second glance here, I'm thinking I actually like the way this looks with the black still around the red. Remember, this was like dark matter, dark energy. And I think that black smoke really plays well into that. So I think we're actually going to keep the blending mode as normal here. So we're going to do that. So the last little bit that we got to do here is just desaturate our shadows. So let's go ahead and go into our curves. We're going to go to Luma versus saturation. And actually there is one more thing that I want to do. Let's go ahead and bring that down. There we go. But let's also come back to our custom curves and come back into our waveform. And what we're gonna do is add a little bit. Bring those shadows down just a little bit. Bring it up, because I kind of really like that muted look. Add a little bit of pop. And there we go. I think that's good. Let's go ahead and Control S to save so we don't lose anything. And we're going to come back into our edit page. And let's go ahead and come back to the beginning, play that, and you can see that the energy bursts are tracking really, really nicely with my hands. That's That's basically perfect. Now, like I said, that was a super easy track. My hands were barely moving at all, but in Project Redlamb, the little short skit that I put out last week, I had 6 different fusion clips where my hands were actually moving quite a bit. And in situations like that, that's where I had to start playing around with the different tracking modes and tracking areas and the channels that I was tracking and all of that. If you want to see what that looked like, as well as how I planned and edited and shot that video, make sure you check out this video right here. Also, subscribe to the channel because I've got my next skit planned already, and it's got a lot to do with what's in this case right here. See you later.